Hi,
Hey.
Patrick.
Hi, can you guys hear me okay?
We can. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Hooray! Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, of course. Thank you for having me, and thank you for reading my book.
Oh my goodness. We are so excited to talk to you about this amazing book and also learn more about you, the amazing Patrick.
Okay.
Would you mind starting by sharing a little bit about yourself and your journey into comics?
Certainly. Let's see. I mean, without getting like way into the weeds, I've been making comics since, I mean, I think the first time I did any comics, I was about 4 or 5. And I had been just making these tiny little books with my mom helping me. They were essentially like these one-page panels, and then I would, sort of have the captions typed out by my mom so they were legible, and it would be like these really silly stories. Like one of them was like a tea party at monster's house, and there was all sorts of different monsters that went there, including Dracula and Frankenstein's creature, and then there was an electric monster, and we all just made the whole comic was literally just gathering to have a tea party. Anyway, so we would bind these things, and then I have these little booklets, which I actually still have to today. But the And then like as I grew up, I would make comics every once in a while, especially more in my teens. But the As far as reading comics goes, I got into it pretty heavy in like the early '90s, and then I ended up kind of falling off and getting more focused on making film. And so by like the late '90s, and when I was getting out of high school, I pretty much was convinced that I just wanted to do nothing but make movies. So that's pretty much what I did with all of my focus in my studies and all the stuff that I consumed. I grew up in Iowa, and I kind of figured that as some no-name person from, Iowa, if I honestly wanted a shot at making movies, I kind of had to do nothing but eat and sleep movies. So it kind of drawing, which was something I'd been doing forever, kind of took a back seat for at least like a decade or so. And it wasn't until like 2010 that I started drawing again. I was taking a break after like the second feature that I had done, which the features that I did, I write and direct like independent horror stuff, if you don't know. Very low budget, usually like definitely less than half a million, even as small as like $12,000 for the budget. So, but I mean, we would make them and they get distributed and stuff, but they're pretty small. Anyway, so after a break of like a second feature that I'd worked on since I moved to LA, I got back into drawing as something to do creatively that was, small and could be conceived of and executed within like an hour instead of like, a lot longer, like when you work with movies. So a little bit into that, getting back into drawing, I realized that I should probably think about doing comics as a way to still do storytelling and still scratch the itch of drawing, but have also like a much lower threshold in terms of being able to come up with something and create something, and have a finished product of the comic or whatever. And so that's I would say around like 2010 to 2012. I was honestly thinking about doing comics as an adult. And then I was doing little zines and stuff, worked on self published things from other writers. And then it honestly wasn't until I've done pitches around like 2017. And of course, none of those really got any traction with any of the publishers. But I was at that point getting kind more and more serious about it. And this whole time too, I'm still working on movie stuff as well. But I'd always been watering the little plant that was, drawing and doing comics. And I'd done a self-published thing in around 2020 called Free for All, which is finally starting to come into print. And then around 2021, I was asked by W. Maxwell Prince to do interiors for his anthology called Haha. And that was like the first issue of anything I'd ever had published. And at that point, I felt like I'd also done that all traditionally in the sense of like it was on paper. I did ink and gouache for coloring, And I felt super comfortable and was very happy with how it turned out. So I realized going forward, like I kept wanting to work just with traditional media. And it was right around then that I got the opportunity to pitch Beneath the Trees.
That is, I mean, we definitely have some W. Maxwell Prince fans here. So,
Yeah, well, right here too.
So that's amazing. So can you share a little bit more about where this story came from, Beneath the Trees, sort of how it came from your mind to the book we get to hold and read now?
Sure. It's very random. I ended up as a daily practice just drawing in the morning, first thing, and it would be the type of thing where like I'd smoked for a long time, and then when I quit, I kind of replaced that morning ritual with the drawing. So that's kind of how that started. So like around like 2013, and so every day I'd just be drawing. In 2017, I did a doodle that was like it was just an anthropomorphic bear with an axe on their shoulder walking down a hillside, and they're all bloody. And the idea sort of popped up as soon as I was looking at the drawing of like it would be really interesting and amusing to have, you know, a serial killer that was in some sort of children's book sort of animal people town. Which, yeah, the first thing that my point of reference for that was Richard Scarry's Busy Town. I grew up checking those books out, and it just seemed like the easiest thing for me to wrap my head around. So I was like, what if there was a serial killer in Busy Town? Was essentially what I thought. And then and the more I thought about it, I was like, what if there was two serial killers in Busy Town, and how that would be a big problem for our main character, who would of course be a serial killer, and that's kind of where the whole thing came together. And I immediately had that title, Beneath the Trees Where Nobody Sees, from the song Teddy Bear's Picnic, that had been kicking around my head forever as a weird, sinister sort of thing. And and it just clicked pretty much in that moment of like, oh yeah, it would be called Beneath the Trees Where Nobody Sees. And I just sort of wrote down those couple of sentences in this document. Like I have like a Google Doc with just ideas that I always write everything into. And so when I had the chance to pitch it, IDW, Mark Doyle had just come on as director of editorial, and they were looking for books for their creator owned stuff that they wanted to push. And I just randomly had an opportunity to pitch several items. So this was like one of 4 pitches that I sent to them, and they pretty quickly came back asking to see everything I had for Beneath the Trees. So at that point, I had to turn it from like a couple of sentences and a pitch to like, a full-on outline of like everything. At the time, I thought it was going to be a graphic novel because that's what I was asked to pitch for. And so I split it up into chapters, and I only had like 5 chapters. And it wasn't until after I kind of got feedback that they had thought it would work much better as like a serialized, singles, and then also wanted to give me an extra issue to let the story breathe a little more. And what's interesting to me, at least, is the issue that extra issue became was issue number 3, with Melody the butcher and her late husband, which it's a really interesting issue for me. I honestly didn't know if anybody would be into it because it deals with a lot of grief in a weird way. But anyway, but that's kind of how that all shook out.
Did you have a question, Wes?
Yeah, was this your favorite pitch of the 4 that you had?
Yes. I think to be honest, it was the one of them all that I knew I could just hit the ground running with. So I in that sense, yeah, it immediately felt like a ton of fun. There was something that felt really sort of wrong about doing such horrible stuff to such a cute town. And something in that made it very appealing to me. So I don't know why. I'm really not like a malicious person, but it was just, I think there was something about the sort of innocence of the small town And it's not to say like that innocence is like pervasive throughout, because I kind of feel like the city that we see that Samantha goes to is very much like a 1980s, New York City, basically. And it's everybody's very like, been there and done that with that town. But the town of Woodbrook felt like very innocent, and there was something about seeing such horrible stuff play out against such an innocent backdrop that made it feel, you would really feel that impact. And that was really interesting to me. So I think that's why I was so like ready to go with that one.
How did the idea of having a serial killer in Busytown translate to what we now know as Samantha? Where did her sort of like voice and story come from?
Well, it felt like we needed to have a protagonist that you could, the challenge is like, how do you make a serial killer somebody you can root for in a weird way? And that was a real interesting thing to tackle. I mean, a lot of not a ton, but like some of the inspiration came from the Norman Bates from Psycho, and how you sort of have a real interesting, switch halfway through that movie, and all of a sudden you're trying to see if you can get away with it. And then the idea of having, giving Samantha the psychology of kind of what the compulsion is, and then also the way she carries it out. And it felt like, to me, just the most relatable way to it would be to have it be order versus chaos. And so they're both evil, but like Samantha's like, she's like, ordered evil. She's not chaotic evil, which is obviously Nigel. And so if there's a way to, if you can have lawful evil sort of be the main, base level, then I felt like there would be at least something that readers could sink their teeth into with her and identify with. And it's also like, there's something about like she revels in the coziness of the town, and that felt like the thing to sort of help anchor readers with as well. And to have that be upset as well by Nigel felt like a really interesting way to sort of approach have people on Samantha's side. Um, and it also was really interesting to me that perhaps this is basically this story is like the first time she's honestly really taken a look at herself. And so it was sort of an interesting thing to have the reader go along for the ride with her, possibly for the first time, really, being introspective about what it is that she is, or what it is that she's doing. And so those are sort of the main entryways I kind of took to getting into Samantha's head. I mean, it's interesting too, because like there's definitely a lot of me in Samantha, not the murderous stuff, but like just other sort of personality traits. But then there's also like a lot of me in all the other characters too, including like Cherry. So it's just kind of a funny thing to do, go and write characters like that.
Is there one character that resonates most powerful with you?
Is Samantha the one that resonates the most? Is that,
or any of them? Which is there?
Oh, is there one that does that? I think Charlie. I felt the worst about what happened to Charlie, and I feel like he's sort of he's like the consummate citizen of Woodbrook. Like he has a cute family. They're all sort of plugged in doing their thing. He's just making his way. He's maybe a little too hard on himself. And he just kind of falls victim to being in the wrong place at the wrong time. And I kind of feel like that's a lot of me as well. So I think that's probably, which is, it's funny because like, I think I put myself into a lot of the victims except for Cherry. There's like a little bit of me and Cherry, but like that one was a lot of just, the sort of, I really amped it up for obvious reasons of like trying to make it out as a sort of horror trope of like the person that sort of seems like they might deserve something horrible happening to them, and then something really bad happens that's beyond the pale, and it really kind of pushes things. So, but for the most part, yeah, I think Charlie I probably identify the most. Also, just as to go along with that sort of point before, like the duck, that is 100% like me. I would have tried to help out a person to fix their car, especially if I could see what was easily wrong with it. And then, so that's kind of why I gave that to Samantha. Also, to sort of do a riff on the, I believe the Ted Bundy uh, move of like he would very much pose as a person in distress who needed help, and then would have like a broken arm and a sling or whatever, and would have like I think he would have like chloroform or something in them. Um, but yeah, so yeah, probably I would go if I had to pick. I'd say Charlie.
Going back to Cherry Gherkin, or sorry, Cherry fucking Gherkin. She says something when Samantha's trying to get a rise out of her on the line when she's trying to get her latte. She said
Yeah.
something like, "We won't be bullied by your kind anymore." Something.
Yeah.
And I was wondering, yeah, we won't be bullied by your kind anymore. I was wondering if you built such an incredible world. I was wondering if there was something to that, where because Sam obviously she's a bear, she's clearly a predator. Cherry is a hog or a pig or whatever, so she's not really a predator. She can be prey. So I was wondering if this is a world that's like a post, I don't know, some kind of laws were passed where the predators are no longer, you know, like preying on prey, so to speak. And because we were also talking before you got on about how there are all these other animals. Some are food or not anthropomorphic. Some are pets. So like, what went into that? Is it just to make us feel uneasy, or was there something more going on?
That's a really good point, and it's funny because my daughter has gotten really into Zootopia, and that's if anybody's seen Zootopia, that's like a big part of it. And to be honest, it wasn't as intentional as all that. Although your reading of it, or just the point you bring up, is totally valid and interesting, and could be something explored later as well. But it was honestly, it felt like a very I don't know. It felt like a fitting thing to have to put in the mouth of a character who was being the bully, but also using it as an excuse to be a bully, is by kind of feeling victimized in that same moment. And then also the idea of like anger being or fear being sort of the kernel of anger, especially for folks that kind of overreact. And so that honestly was kind of that's all I was sort of working with going into it. But obviously there is, I don't know if we can get into it, I guess, if you want, in terms of regular animals and anthropomorphic animals. That 100% came from the Richard Scarry books. And it was mostly just from I didn't do a lot of deep research in them for this, but it was something that obviously I read a bunch as a kid. And when I started looking through the covers and stuff again, I immediately noticed that he has like, people, the characters he has have pets. And then there's a cover for, I believe it's the cover for What Do People Do All Day? Which is like a busy town book. And there's shop fronts in the front of the cover. And one of them prominently is a butcher shop that a pig works at in the Richard Scarry cover, which I felt was like totally bonkers. And there's like sausage links and stuff hanging down. And I was like, how does that work, Richard Scarry? Like that's done. And everybody's okay with that? Like, is he being cheeky? What's going on? But I was like, I 100% want to have a butcher shop in Woodbrook. And so that's why I made Melody the butcher. And then as I kind of started riffing on it throughout, I felt like it would totally be fitting to have a bear or just any animal at the time I was thinking of it, like happen upon Samantha as she was doing her thing. And then I was like, well, if we're gonna, we might as well be on the nose about it. So let's like use a bear. And so the bear's gonna, in their natural environment, is going to come upon Samantha. And I felt like it would be obvious for obvious reasons, like there'd be a lot of interesting juxtaposition with that. And to help kind of create that sort of deeper conversation of Samantha questioning her own self, as the story went on, but then also to sort of have something that wasn't 100% digestible. I don't even totally know the implications of it all. or why, evolutionarily speaking, that would happen. But it just felt like, a really interesting thing to have throughout. And it helped create these moments, for this sort of deeper introspection of Samantha. It felt like, so that's kind of why I chose to do what I did.
And actually, sorry, I'm gonna
No,
sum up
please.
some more time. I also, you mentioned that you alluded to the sequel, which we heard was announced, and I was wondering if you are able to talk at all about that. If it's gonna just be in this world with different characters, if we're going back to Woodbrook. We were talking, you're sort of like rooting for Samantha, but also not, and like if that meant we were gonna get more Samantha or something totally different.
It's yeah, I can talk about it a bit. It's for sure going to be centered around Samantha and Woodbrook. Uh, this I sort of figured it was in like the early 80s. I think like 1984 is what I chose. And then so we're going to jump ahead to the early 90s. And in that big jump, there's going to be everything else that comes along with that sort of, technologically speaking. There's going to be the internet now. There's also going to be like corporate land development for like big box stores, and then suburban, sprawl is going to start happening. Some forests are going to be cleared and made way to make way for the suburban enclaves. And I basically, like, a lot of Samantha's world and the world in general is going to feel like it's getting smaller. And that's kind of going to be the setting for Samantha and where she finds herself. Also, you'll be touching base with characters that have survived the first book, and then we're catching up with them now, like around like 8 years later, and everything that sort of the nuts and bolts of actually what they're doing in their lives, but then also the psychological like impact of the trauma they went through is going to be coming back too. So that's the main setting.
Do folks have out
So this was like such an incredible debut.
Oh, thank you.
I was wondering, and it's amazing that we're going to be getting more, but I was wondering if there were other things you'd also hope to write outside of Woodbrook. You mentioned having 4 original pitches. If there's something also down the line that you either are working on now or would like to work on in the future.
Yeah, so I think the cover's already been announced. I'm doing a segment in a DC horror anthology that's going to be coming up. So the main thing has been like, this takes a long time. Who knew? Comics takes a long time to make. But the hope is that I can do these little anthology things and work with different publishers while doing it. That will allow me to kind of do other creative stuff outside of this. Because for the foreseeable future, for at least like another year, I'm going to be doing Beneath the Trees. And then I have another thing that has not been announced that I guess I can't say yet, but there is more stuff, small stuff. And I am actively putting together a book that I would like to work with a different artist on, just so I can create stuff outside of this. Just another new, different idea with a artist, and I would be writing. It is funny, like having done this and realizing like how much time it takes, etc. I feel like I very much need to start working with other artists just to be able to tell all the stories that I want to tell, because I have quite a few ideas that I would like to do. I definitely have more than the other 3 ideas that I pitched with. That list has grown. The document has gotten larger. So I very much want to do more stuff.
I've got 2 questions, if that's all right. Gary?
Sure.
So my first question, and this is something that my friend here, Wes, and I were talking about, we seem to be in a nice time of horror anthologies. There's a ton coming out right now. Obviously, you got the DC horror thing. Why do you think that is? Aside from the holiday season, do you think it's just been, with the anniversary of the EC stuff coming out and Hello Darkness and all that kind of stuff? What's your vision as to why that is occurring right now? That's question one. Question two, who are your dream talents to work with? I would love to know what kind of pairings that you've got envisioned to support you in your future projects.
So I think, I mean, as far as anthology projects go, it to me feels like a really easy way to put together a bunch of talent that normally couldn't jump on a project if it was too large. And then to put them out there. And then horror, I mean, listen, I've been doing horror stuff for like a couple of decades at this point, and I love it. Just as a fan, I love it. And I feel like that audience is just like evergreen. I feel like it's something it's always there. People are always hungry for other stuff. It's fun to see creators jump in that world that maybe normally don't, and maybe that's another reason why anthologies are a really good space for that. But yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Like, has the EC resurgence helped inspired other folks, or has that just popped in because it has become more of a thing? And I don't know what the answer is, but I am very grateful for it, just because it's like a cool, interesting space, and I hope to see a ton more from it. Who would I like to work with? Well, all sorts of people. I mean, it's tough because I don't have like that. Well, let me see. Let me see if I can find like a list of folks that I've been putting together, because I mean, like, it's been a
Secondary
thing.
way to look at it is, are there things coming out now that you're enjoying, or that you're like, kind of putting in your Google Doc of dreams, something like, hey, I really like this, and this artist knocked it out of the park, that kind of thing too.
I mean, it's a cool way to rephrase it too, just because I'm like, recently gotten really into Michael Walsh's Frankenstein. If anybody's picked that one up, that one blew. Like, Michael Walsh has been like knocking it out of the park with horror stuff for a long time. But like, if anybody's checked out Silver Coin, like, you should definitely check that out. But then just reading through his run on Frankenstein, like, totally floored me. I wasn't ready for the emotional component of that when I read issue 1, so like I was like very into it. And then also his work on Sabra Purzada's The Sacred Damned, which I think just came out, and yeah, that was cool as hell as well. And so he's definitely a big one for me. I mean, Tinyan's like a powerhouse with horror, just in terms of some of the cooler creators. Like, I'm sure I'm just like blank. Oh, I mean, like, Christian Ward would be a total absolute dream to work with. His stuff is incredible. Speaking of Tinyan, and I feel, I mean, I'm sure there's a ton of other ones that I'm missing. There's another artist. Hold on. Morgan Beam. Anybody check out Morgan Beam's work? Her work is incredible. Also, Molly Mendoza. I don't know if anybody's familiar with Molly Mendoza. I really like her work as well.
Anthology that she's in comes out tomorrow from Distillery.
Yes,
So
yes.
we're talking about horror anthologies and people to work with. Deal. Yes, she's in one that comes out tomorrow.
Awesome plug for that. But there's I'm sure I'm just blanking on stuff now because I'm having the weird stressed brain thing happening. But there are a bunch more awesome artists that I would love to work with.
Thank you. Riley Roscoe did the variant covers.
Oh, yeah.
Your stuff. Will you be working with them in the future as well, or?
I sure hope so. I don't know. Like, as far as I understand stuff, I mean, everybody who worked on this would have to be able to, come back on board. I mean, they would have to, like, it would have to be another whole nother agreement. So like the whole team wouldn't necessarily be the same. I sincerely hope it is. It's going to be the same editorial team. So I'm going to be working with Maggie Howell and Jake Williams again. And then I sincerely hope I get to work with Asano Tonelhau for lettering. And it would be the coolest thing in the world to continue to have Riley do storybook variants and everything. Like I would love to just keep the whole band together, and including Nathan Wittick doing the design stuff with the credits on each page, and then I believe in the collected trade, like those newspaper pages are still sort of the issue breaks. Um, his work on that was incredible because it started off like uh, he was just doing it as a cute way to do the credits, and the IDW had asked me if I had a list of the shops that I was putting into Main Street or just throughout Woodbrook, and if I could pass those along, and add to them as I came up with them. And so that's what Nate used for all of those little ads. And then he, by issue 3, kind of realized that this was turning into like the newspapers that Nigel was sort of, doing stuff with. And that all happened organically outside of, like, I didn't even talk to him until after the whole thing was done. But I loved it. And he knew that I was really into them. And he just kept riffing on them. And then by the end of it, like I was incorporating the newspaper into like issue 6, which was like a really fun. And if you like look inside of like Nigel's darkroom, you can see like the poor Martin newspaper like against the wall, like taped on the wall and stuff. Like it was a really interesting sort of evolution. So like I mean, fingers crossed I get Nate on board as well, to do a riff on it that feels appropriate for the time jump and everything. But yeah, I really hope so.
Do you think, like, Dexter obviously brought to mind through reading some of this stuff? Do you think we'll get like an original sin for Samantha?
I've got I mean, I don't know in terms of like an expanded thing, but I don't know if anybody's has anybody had a chance to check out the Ashcan that came out from, it was San Diego, and then we also did another variant on at New York, and it's so I actually don't know what the original sin is totally for Dexter. I'm assuming it's like a prequel of how he got into it. But we sort of did that with the issue 0 for that Ashcan, which is kind of Samantha 20 years before everything, and she's like a freshly graduated, college grad who finds herself backpacking in Germany, and she's really twisted up inside because she doesn't know what to do with these feelings that she has roiling around inside of her, and then ends up acting on them for the first time. I think that there's a ton of stuff to do with that. And I feel like, yeah, it would be stupid to say that I'm never going to touch on that stuff again. So I won't, but I don't want to say too much either. So.
Patrick, can I ask what you're most proud of from this book, other than the fact that it's amazing and that it exists and we get to hold it and talk about how amazing it is? The thing I'm most proud of with the whole book is that listen, I'm sure pretty much every person who makes an artistic creation and puts it out into the world has a lot of self-doubt, and myself included. So as I was putting it out there, like I got the idea that issue 1 was going to be really well received as soon as we got the first review. Up until then, I was like, I don't know, is it any good? I can't tell anymore. And so, and the first reviews came in, and they were just stellar. Like they totally knocked me off my feet. And then I pretty much was like, they're gonna hate issue 2. Like they're gonna expect something else. And then after issue 2 did pretty well, issue 3, I was like, well, they're definitely not gonna like issue 3. Nobody dies in that one. It's weird and it's about grief and like nothing, And then people were into that one. And then so basically, as it kept going, I kind of realized like I was taking swings with the book, like as big as I could, because I didn't ever know if I would ever get the chance to do another book with a publisher. And so I guess I'm most proud that like the whatever inspiration like that I got, following that as far as I could was just like really well rewarded, in terms of connecting with readers. And I guess that I just never anticipated that at all.
And so it was just very encouraging. And it, I couldn't have, I don't think I've ever had as much satisfaction with any other artistic project that I've had, like movies included, like anything. Like this is honestly like the most rewarding experience that I've ever had.
Yeah, and we're all the better for it that you made your way into comics. So
Well, I
we're
appreciate
grateful for
that.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to ask if you were surprised by the response to the
I was
series.
totally
Yeah.
floored. Like I honestly like didn't, and it continued to be like as it goes on. I really don't know what to make of it other than being super grateful and feeling super blessed with this whole thing. It's very hard for me to think about it too much because I start to get in my head about like what I'm doing next and worrying whether or not it's going to be as well received, and also being afraid that I'm just going to like somehow fall into a bit of complacency with doing what I know works well versus taking it a chance in a direction that I haven't gone yet with the whole thing. So that's kind of that sucks. But I'm doing my best to sort of manage it. But it's a good problem to have, though. I mean, to be totally frank. So I am really grateful for it.
Yeah, I mean, Eisner nominated right out the gate is pretty badass.
Yeah.
I think, we were chatting earlier. Gary was saying, incorrect, like, if I paraphrase this incorrectly, but this reads sort of like someone who's been in the industry for like a decade, right? Like, did all the superhero stuff that they felt like they had to do, paid their dues, and now is like, now I've earned this, like, passion project, right? Like, now I get to really make the book that I've wanted to make. And we have people all the time who come in to the shop and are like, oh my God, this is amazing. I need to read everything they've done. And so I feel like you get to prevent the sophomore slump by the fact that everyone thinks that this is like your 30th project. Like there is no. So you're
Well,
like,
I mean,
oh,
it is, but only in comic form. Is it new? But the other ones have all been, movie or whatever, screenplay related. I've written a lot of screenplays since 2000 or 2001. And so I think that, I mean, it's funny to have had a whole career just in a completely different medium, and then just make a shift because it is like I just showed up more or less formed, and folks haven't really had a chance to see all of my missteps and learning and bad, horribly written screenplays and whatever. They're out there. They're floating around haunting me. But but yeah, so it's definitely, yeah, it's been interesting. I certainly couldn't be more excited to continue doing comics though for the foreseeable future. To be totally frank, like a lot of the film projects I've worked on have been, I mean, most of them I'd say I'm really proud of. But there's just not, it's weird. I've just never had this much traction with anything. And it's just like way more satisfying working on comics right now. I don't know. I just like literally like having this, what we're doing right now, is totally new to me. So the and like is such a sort of mind-blowing amount of community and support that I'm not used to, but like I couldn't be more appreciative of. So it's yeah, it's been crazy.
that's awesome. Yeah, please.
I have a question about a specific character and like
Mhm.
the friend who's the mom and the very last, like the second last person that she kills. Does she know when she's going with her to the other house and she's like, why are you wearing goggles? And she knows that she's a serial killer. She knows her son's a killer. Does she know that she's gonna die in that moment? Do you think when you wrote it?
I think that was in the moment right after it. Like it was very like the way I went into it was like she's so trusting that it just didn't even occur to her until like that moment basically of like what Samantha has planned for her solution to this whole problem. Because I wanted it to be very much a tragedy for Lola, and for her undoing to also just to be that unconditional love that she has for essentially like a psychopath and her son the sociopath. So it's a sad ending for Lola, I'm afraid.
Other questions for Patrick?
I have another oddball question, so sorry
Mhm.
about that. Do you have any interest or aspirations to work on any like, legacy characters? Like a specific Marvel superhero or DC or anything like that?
Not necessarily. I mean, like, listen, I think I have a feeling that I would like to do something crazy with Ghost Rider. And mainly because of, but it would be like totally not connected to anything. It was just the idea of having the Faustian character who ends up having a flaming skull is awesome. And it's also, it was funny because I came to the appreciation of it through, anybody ever check out, it is a Edgar Allan Poe short story called Toby Dammit, I think. And then they made a short out of it for this anthology film from the 60s, I think, called Spirits of the Damned. Is that right? And there's a short in it called Toby Dammit that Fellini directed. And it's got a young Terrence Stamp in it. And it's basically this, they kind of reframe the whole thing, but it's about like, that one's about an actor who basically sells his soul to the devil to become a star, and then of course he hates his stardom and whatever. So I was like, well, it'd be really interesting to do it as a motorcyclist, like if you took it like an Evel Knievel, and they had like a Faustian bargain with the devil, like whatever. And I was like, and then I was thinking, I was like, I think that's Ghost Rider. So, like, and then I was like, but yeah, that would be so funny. Because I feel like I was basically gonna do that and then just rename it Toby Fuckit. and then because that would be the stunt writer would be named Toby, and then everybody would try and talk them out of doing these crazy stunts, and Toby would just go like, nah, fuck it, I'll just do it anyway. Anyway, so maybe Ghost Rider.
Look forward to that in the Marvel horror anthology soon.
You just spread the word, plant that seed for me. I'd be happy to do it.
Anything even loosely related to Poe, we would like to special request that you launch it in Baltimore.
Yes.
There's a rule, so we'll be ready.
Yeah. That's the first I've ever spoken about it. So here you go.
Perfect.
Exclusive.
Patrick, the project that was announced with Oni Press, is that the reprinting of the things you were mentioning earlier? That are
Yeah,
like finally coming? Yeah, cool.
Yeah, initially we've done a Zoop campaign, and the Zoop campaign is going to be the first time it's ever been in print. And so we're doing exclusive printing for all the backers that supported it, and it's got a little extra back matter as well, along with extra fun stuff we're putting in with it. But then after that's done, next year Oni's going to put out the book. It's called Free for All, and it's should be coming out in March, I believe, from Oni. And the printing, the Zoop campaign is coming out imminently, but the Oni Press version of that will be coming out, I believe, in March.
Nice. Any other questions for Patrick before I jump into my?
One more.
Okay, yeah, please.
So this has been out for a little while now, and everyone loves it. Is there anything you would change that you think that would make it better, or if you think it'd be funnier and make it worse?
I had some really good ideas about making it bad. Actually, you know what? I feel like there was a missed opportunity, and the whole thing would completely change if I did this. So I wouldn't do it, but it was a really good lesson learned, and it's this. In issue 2, I've got Cherry Gherkins, and she is just like such a jerk by design, right? And I sort of spoke to that earlier, but I kind of realized as I was finishing out that issue 2, and I was literally like drawing and painting the last couple of pages, that I felt like a missed opportunity to take a character like Cherry and then have her sort of survive this, whatever that moment was, and then give her character like a total redemption arc, so that by the end you're actually like rooting for her, and to maybe have her sort of have a moment of realization about her being a jerk or whatever it is. Because I feel like those redemption arcs, like if you can pull those off with like the total asshole who kind of sees the light a bit, those are incredibly satisfying. And so I mean, again, though, obviously that would have changed. I mean, I don't even know what that would be with this story. But it was a really good lesson learned. And yeah. So anyway, that was like the kind of the one thing that I guess I would change in sort of, you know what I mean? Like if it was an alternate universe, I'd be curious to see what that would be. The other thing though I would say about this is that like it's funny because I'm super pleased with how the book turned out, and honestly, like I don't want to alter anything about it. But I've had folks like there's definitely been interest in turning it into either like a show or a feature, like a movie, some animated project or whatever. And that stuff's, I don't know, folks talk about it a lot. I get little updates every once in a while, like people that are interested in it, and it changes all the time. And there's nothing that's been set in stone or anything, so who knows? But I'm realizing that I'm not really precious about it, and I think a lot of it has to do with how happy I am with the book, and the fact that the book exists. It exists, and it's exactly what I want it to be, and is another reason why I'm so happy working in comics right now. Like when you work on movies or TV shows or whatever, but in my experience, movies, it's so hard to get the actual thing that you want to make made. Like there's so many external factors that have to line up. And with comics, like there's so much control you have over it. Once you get to like, once you get to, the finish line, chances are with a comic, like it's going to be pretty close. And yeah, and this is my first experience with that on a large enough scale of like, a 6-issue miniseries, or now it's going to be more than that. But it's just super satisfying to have everything pretty much as you wanted it to be. So it's that part of it has been super interesting to me.
Patrick, do you have any questions for us? You don't have to, but if you do, we can try to answer them.
No, I mean, not particular. I mean, the one thing I would just say is like, again, thank you all for reading this book, and for participating in this whole discussion that we're having. It honestly means the world to me, because a lot of this book is just spread around through word of mouth, and folks reading it and telling other people to read it, et cetera, and having enough interest in it to want to speak with me or just, speak with other people that have read it. So, I mean, I would just say a huge heartfelt thank you to all of you guys.
Yeah, thank you, Patrick. We love this book. We do like a blind poll at the beginning to see if people liked or hated the book. And overwhelmingly, this was a beloved book.
Oh, cool.
I'm always the one that takes the picture, and I was like, oh, no.
But I would also say that having a creator join adds such a fantastic layer of appreciation to the book, getting to hear your process, what you enjoyed about it, how it feels after, really helps us love the book even more. So thank you for sharing your time and for sharing your skills and gifts in the book. So we appreciate you, and we're
it's my pleasure, to be honest, like totally my pleasure.
We're excited for everything that comes next.
Me too.
Any final questions, comments, concerns for Patrick?
Can we expect to see you at Baltimore Comic-Con 2025?
I hope so. I've been doing a lot of cons this year for basically the first time ever, because I don't know a lot of people in the comics community, so I was trying to meet as many as I could. And then it came to my attention that Baltimore has one of the best comics conventions. Um, and it's one of the ones that unfortunately I didn't get to go to this year. So I sincerely hope so, because it's some conventions. It feels weird in the sense that like comics feel sort of secondary, and I don't know. It's I'm realizing that the ones that are more comics focused are the much more satisfying conventions to go to. So there's definitely a very good chance.
We've definitely been bullying Oni Press into having a bigger presence at Baltimore Comic Con, especially since a bunch of their team lives here in Baltimore.
Oh, right on.
So that would be a great place. But also, you should talk to Trish Forstner and be like, pull an extra chair up to your table, and we can hang out and draw adorable
Or just
animals.
set up at our booth next year.
Yeah, or that. We'll have you. You can come hang out. Everything will be great. But yes,
That
if you
would
want to
be
be
awesome.
in Baltimore, we would love to have you.
That would be great. Yeah, I will be there at some point. Hopefully, I can make it happen next year.
Thank you so much, Patrick. We really appreciate you.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you again. I appreciate it as well.